Alright, so in this deck tech, we are taking a look at a 4-color Ephemerate deck that did really well in a pretty large tournament in Japan over the last few days. So there have been various Ephemerate decks in the format for a while now, which have performed pretty well, but this is a new version of the archetype using quite a few cards from the new Baldur's Gate set. So this deck uses creatures with enter the battlefield effects that we want to get as much value out of as possible with Ephemerate. So of course Ephemerate is 1 white for an instant. It says exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield. And it has rebound, so if you cast it from your hand, exile it as it resolves. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you may cast it from exile without paying its mana cost. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at the creatures that we want to get enter the battlefield value from. First up, we have 1 copy of Stonehorn Dignitary. It's 4 mana for a 1/4. It says when it enters the battlefield, target opponent skips their next combat phase. Okay, then of course we also have Meldrifter, 5 mana for a 2/2 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, and it has Evoke for 3. Then we have Ardent Elementalist, the red version of Archaeomancer from Midnight Hunt. It's 4 mana for a 2/1. It says when it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. So of course that has direct synergy with Ephemerate, since we can bring Ephemerate back to our hand, or any of our powerful instants and sorceries, which I will run down next. Okay, and then we have 1 copy of Trinket Mage, of course. 3 mana for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact with mana value 1 or less and put it into your hand. So this can search for our artifact lands. So we are playing a bunch of artifact jewels in our color combinations, so Trinket Mage can fetch that. We are also running a full set of Lotus Petal, 0 mana for an artifact with tap, sack, add 1 mana of any color. So the mage can search for that. And we also have 1 copy of Nile Spellbomb as Graveyard Hate, which we can tutor up. 1 mana for an artifact with tap, sacrifice Nile Spellbomb, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. And when Nile Spellbomb is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 black. If you do, draw a card. Okay, and then the rest of our creatures are all from the new Baldur's Gate set. So first up is Vicious Battle Rager. It's black, 4 mana for a 1/5. It says when it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. So the initiative is a new thing which is kind of similar to the Monarch. It's kind of a cross between the Monarch and venturing into the dungeon. So the initiative basically lets you venture into this specific dungeon called the Undercity. I'll just include a link to it. It has various powerful effects. So there's kind of a debate about what's better, the initiative or the Monarch. So this deck is the first to really explore this idea in depth in Pauper. Another card which also gives us the initiative is this new card, Arakokra Sneak. 4 mana for a 1/4 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, you take the initiative. And then our final creature with enter the battlefield effect is also a card from Baldur's Gate called Kenku Artificer. 3 mana for a 1/1. It says when it enters the battlefield, put 3+1/+1 counters on up to 1 target non-creature artifact, and that artifact becomes a 0/0 homunculus artifact creature with flying. So when it enters the battlefield, it permanently transforms one of our non-creature artifacts into a 3/3 flyer. So obviously the best is to do that with our artifact lands, since they're indestructible. So that means we can transform our lands into 3/3s with flying and indestructible, which is pretty good, and keep blinking the Artificer as many times as we can to get maximal value from that. Okay, and then the rest of the deck just rounds that all out with instants and sorceries, 2 copies of Cast Down, 4 copies of Cleansing Wildfire, which of course has synergy with the indestructible lands. So Cleansing Wildfire, 2 mana for a sorcery, destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and you draw a card. Okay, then we have 2 copies of Dispel, 1 blue for an instant, counter target instant spell. 1 copy of the instant speed sacrifice effect, Devour Flesh. 2 mana, target player sacrifices a creature, then gains life equal to that creature's toughness. We have 2 copies of the split card, Fire and Ice. So Fire, 2 mana for an instant, deal 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Ice, also an instant for 2, but it's blue. Tap target permanent, draw a card. Then 3 copies of Lightning Bolt, and 2 copies of Mystical Teachings, 4 mana for an instant. Search your library for an instant card or a card with flash, and put it into your hand, and it has flashback. Its flashback cost is 5 generic, 1 black. So we can use this to search for ephemerates, but also any of our useful situational instants. So this deck looks pretty cool and fun. Basically combines ephemerate Enter the Battlefield decks with the artifact Dual Lands, Cleansing Wildfire combo with this new Kenku Artificer for a pretty cool 4-color mid-range deck. As always, let me know what tweaks you would make to this deck, or if you have ideas for similar decks using similar cards. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.